everyone, welcome to Ramane Nova. This is me, Esme, your host, and in today's episode we're going to be talking about algorithmic bias. Alright, so as you know, today's topic is on algorithmic bias, and it's in a more, let's say, in a more like social kind of impact kind of way. Kind of what the topic is today, because there's political, there's cultural, and there's a whole bunch of these different types of topics and different discussions that you can make, but I'm talking more about like the societal impact that algorithmic bias has today. Okay, so I don't know if you guys know what algorithmic bias is, but I certainly didn't know until recently. I did hear of the term beforehand in a few previous classes that I've taken at my university, but it wasn't until now that I've researched a little bit more for this project and for this week's topic that I finally understood what it meant exactly. So, what is an algorithmic bias? Algorithmic bias is the unfairness and the exclusivity, I can't speak today, that happens when a computer system has systematic errors that are repeated consistently due to errors in coding and the amount of data collected and selected by the algorithm. These biases take on different forms and can be discriminatory towards certain groups of individuals. And a little insight on this topic is that algorithmic bias can be connected to social biases, such as race, gender, ethnicity, and sexuality. So, now that we have the definition of what algorithmic bias means, of course everybody has their own individual definition. And you guys can also look up what it means. I mean, you won't get an exact Google search definition if you look it up, but if you read about it, you'll get a better understanding on it. But how does algorithmic bias shape the impact it has on society? Now that's the real question. So, in the social aspect of society, algorithmic bias can be a difficult problem to deal with. For example, we all know that police enforcements use facial recognition software to be able to help with cases or their criminal investigations. However, this type of software is not necessarily accurate per se. It takes a while to get computer vision to recognize what a face is and what it looks like. And also, there are 7 billion, 8 billion people on this earth, and everyone has a face, and so facial recognition softwares take quite a bit of time to try to search for suspects or for missing people, and in order to train these computers to be able to do this, you have to have data of what a face is and what a face looks like, of course. And so it's not too accurate, of course. Police and FBI and all these different types of agencies, of course they get the best that there is for these types of things, but it's just a difficult thing to deal with. To kind of provide a little bit more insight on this, there was a TED Talk that I watched and listened to by Joy, I'm probably going to say this wrong, but Buolamwini, and it's called How I'm Fighting Bias in Algorithms, and it explains that, and this is in quote, I quote her, that across the US, police departments are starting to use facial recognition software in their crime-fighting arsenal. Police departments can currently look at these networks unregulated, using algorithms that have not been audited for accuracy. Yet we know facial recognition is not fail-proof, and labeling faces consistently remains a challenge. So she is also saying that these facial recognition softwares aren't fail-proof, as she says, and they're not necessarily accurate. They're not coded to be precise. And to go further into detail, she also explains that misidentifying a suspected criminal is not a laughing matter, nor is breaching civil liberties. And I have to agree with her, because when you have a criminal on the loose, or you have a criminal, who is imprisoned or in jail, waiting for trial or waiting to get all this investigation done, these misidentifying someone for a criminal is a big thing, because these facial recognition softwares, just provide information and try to provide the closest individual that is suspected. But if that certain individual is not the suspected criminal and is arrested and imprisoned for something that they didn't do, but they look like the suspect or the criminal, it's a big deal, because you're arresting someone, an innocent person, for an action or something that they didn't do, but it's only because a computer says that this is who they are, this is the closest person to whomever. So you never really know if they're innocent or not, unless, they confess, or, trial, and all these crazy things, of course. And as she says, it's not a laughing matter. It's something huge, and it affects, not only does it affect the suspected criminal or the innocent person, or the misidentified criminal, but it also affects their families and society around them, because if you arrest someone who's not the person you're looking for, that just it kind of ruins the reputation of whoever is investigating. Anyways, as I went on my rant of criminals and investigations, I think I've been hearing too many other podcasts on crimes. But anyways, so to continue on, algorithmic bias also shapes today's society, because of the way that we're relying more on algorithms to give us results that can affect people's lives in the future. As technology shapes our society today, so do algorithms and the outcomes from said algorithms. And it can be unfair for people to use facial recognition software, and it doesn't have to be for police work either. During a pandemic like this, because of COVID, I know that I have struggled with my temperature being taken from the face recognition thermometers, because either it did not get a good read on my face, or the lighting could have been too dark. So it's not only for police work, but it also can be, as I said, it can also do with these thermometers that are all around now. Instead of people coming up to you and taking your temperature with a little thermometer gun, now it's these these fancy schmancy facial recognition softwares that you just stand and kind of lower your head a little bit, so it'll take shape of your face and take your temperature and all that stuff. But anyways, adding on to that, in Algorithms of Oppression by Safia Umoja Noble, she provides insight into how the search results that have to do with the term Black girls have significantly different results in 2011. So Noble explains that I again retrieved a Google search results page filled with porn when I looked for quote-unquote Black girls. By then, I thought that my own search history and engagement with a lot of Black feminist texts, videos, and books on my laptop would have shifted the kind of results I would get. It had not. Search happens in a highly commercial environment, and a variety of processes shape what can be found. These results are then normalized as believable and often presented as factual. So she says here, so this is an example of racial bias in the algorithmic bias. So back in 2011, from when this was searched up by Noble, a lot of the search results, as was stated, was filled with porn links, lewd websites, and these terms that were connected to the term Black girls. Now, I think the algorithm has changed a lot, significantly. I mean, it's 2021. It's been what, 10 years since, yeah, wow, that's long, but it's been 10 years, so of course it's changed. But the way that the algorithm would process these results would have to do with also like a personal bias, a human bias, where it collects data from other individuals and kind of makes a result page based on that data set. Meaning that a lot of people back then related these lewd terms, these lewd words, to Black girls or African American people, African American women. Nowadays, it's only if you like specifically search for those, but if you now like search up Black girls in today's world, you get a page full of actresses and like just pictures of these African American women, these models, music videos, and all this stuff. Now, what does that say about society today, or social media, I guess I should say? Well, it's been kind of known that now with all these different terms and these different links that used to happen in the past because of the algorithm that was encoded as best as it is now, it seemed like it made a lot of women of color seem hypersexual. And when that happens in society, it impacts a lot of communities, and as the way that they're seen, they're perceived, and of course nobody wants to be seen as a group of people who are hypersexual, who are sexualized or pornified or whatever. So I could only imagine, and me myself being a person of color, I could only imagine, well, not imagine, but I could kind of feel the way that these women also feel, because of the way that the algorithm has kind of put a stamp on them, put a stamp on us. And this is because of the way the environment and the environmental bias and the data that is collected. And so when that is put on social media as well, a lot of people tend to fetishize these people of color, these women of color. And it's not the best look that people want, and it's not the best way that people want to hear about their community. All right, now moving on just a little bit further because we're nearing the end of the episode. So what is the significance of the social impact of biased algorithms on social media? So on social media, everything is shared. Data is collected, and there is personal bias on various platforms for different identification groups. It's very easy to identify the algorithmic bias on social media platforms like TikTok, Twitter, and even Instagram. With TikTok, don't get me started. I think I spent way too much on the app, but there are many personal experiences that I have encountered when the algorithm sends me to content creators who are Caucasian females with pretty faces and pretty bodies, when in reality I should be getting anime edits, as I am a big anime fan myself, and that is all I look for on this particular platform. But this is because the algorithm collects data on some of the videos that have a lot of bias and liking towards, and puts them on my For You page, is what it's called. Now, I'm not saying that this is bad, that this is a bad thing, or that it's particularly harmful, but when there is a community that is predominantly taking over a subject or a matter of interest, sometimes people can be discriminated against. And there are many creators online that tend to steal from other artists or other content creators to get credit for something that they didn't do themselves. And this usually happens with content creators that are people of color, which I have seen a lot of myself. And adding on to that, the social impact that algorithmic bias has on social media is usually how social constructs begin. For example, with beauty standards, it can be a big part of the bias. For the majority, most people tend to look for blonde, skinny, blue-eyed beauties, especially in like American beauty standards and American beauty. And this is what is generated into like the codes of these AIs, or like how the data collected and how it's processed in these AIs. This then leads to the bias of this particular data, as I said, and this is what is most commonly resulted in search engines or hashtags. However, most of that has significantly changed over the years, and there has been more inclusivity. Wow, I can't say words today. And diversity. There is a heavy significance of the impact on social media because of how the algorithm tends to gather data of what is trending or what is most searched for. This can affect children who are quite young and develop certain internal issues if nothing ever changes or someone breaks the barrier. And this, when I say internal issues, I feel like I am imagining like self-esteem or like expectation of like what they're supposed to look like in the future, what they're supposed to be like. You know, not everyone is perfect. Everybody is their own person. And in the end, most of this comes from us, people, us, society. A possible solution would be to keep talking about how algorithmic bias can be harmful and is still impacting today's society, and learning and investing into the research of algorithmic biases can be something that can be of great help as well. And not to mention, learning about ethics and diversity is also a great way to help with personal and environmental biases that can affect these codes. And who, why, and how we code matters. It matters a lot. Alright, this is the end of the episode. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to today's episode on algorithmic bias on Ramen Nova. And this is your host, Esme. And I shall see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!